first protest, and it's in my heart to be here and to show support.
Today on the show, making progress and making community. As a new civil rights movement builds in the streets, we revisit a conversation with filmmaker Yoruba Richen about gay rights organizing in the Black community. And we hear from author Sarah Schulman about finding community in Palestine. All that and people coming together in New York for equality and justice. Hi, I'm Laura Flanders. Our next guest is the producer-director of a fascinating new film, The New Black. The New Black looks at two very different nights. Election night in California in 2008, when voters approved a ban on same-sex marriage, and 4 years later in Maryland, when voters there became among the first to approve at the ballot equal marriage rights. In both states, African-American voters played a crucial part. Our media rarely teach us how social change happens. Maybe there's a reason for that. The media typically report the news as if the mood just flipped or the weather changed. In The New Black, Yoruba Richen takes us well beyond that to look at the strategy and the sweat that went into Maryland's result. Along the way, she shows us that there is nothing immutable about even deeply held views, and even tradition-based institutions can shift. Yes, this is a story about lesbian, gay, bisexual, and trans people of color and the Black church, and it's relevant for anyone, anywhere doing politics. Yoruba Richen, I'm very glad to have you on the show.
Thank you for having me. It's great to be here.
Let's talk about that night in 2008. Now, you and I had worked together in the summer leading up to that national election, the presidential election 2008. And that night, the news was good and bad. Where did you end up?
So I was in California that night, and we, worked together through the summer and fall, following the election. Such an exciting time. And I was in California, and of course, Barack Obama was elected president, and at the same time, Proposition 8, which outlawed the recently passed law that LGBT folks could marry, was passed. And so it was the same time we had this amazing, euphoric, historic victory of the first Black president. It was a huge defeat for the LGBT community.
And somehow African Americans got blamed for that.
Well, that's what really was crazy. Literally the next day, and following the coverage, the media held onto this narrative that African Americans were to blame for the passage. And so it became very quickly Black against LGBT.
And what were the facts?
Well, an erroneous fact, which is part of the reason why this narrative was propelled, was an exit poll that came out that said that Blacks had voted for it by something like 70%. And that turned out not to be the case. But even still, people think that that's the case because it was so repeated. The facts were that African Americans did vote for it, but in the same proportion that other groups voted for it. And but it was a good sort of narrative, a good media narrative. And then of course within that, Black LGBT voices were left in the dust and completely ignored.
One of the things that those voices were saying that you capture so beautifully in the film is they were saying, look, the media narrative wasn't right, but nor had the organizing been so perfect.
Absolutely.
And that's where you pick up the story.
Absolutely. So yeah, that's the other side of it. The folks who were involved in that campaign, like Sharon, who's in the film, Sharon Letman Hicks, have a big critique of the work that really wasn't done by the sort of mainstream LGBT groups that were at the head of that, of that campaign. And so it was all these things coming together to produce this, this result. And I was there, and as a member of both communities, Black and LGBT, I was like, what is going on? And I wanted to find out why this was happening.
So fast forward to Maryland. Maryland in 2012 was such an important state because, unlike what had happened in California, they were actually voting on marriage equality. Let's pick up that story by starting with your trailer.
Don't let people get you talking about gay rights. This is not about a gay right. There's a difference between civil rights and sacred rights.
Same-sex marriage is going to be put to vote here in Maryland. No same-sex marriage in the state of Maryland.
Honk your horn if you believe.
Many people in the state's religious community, especially in African American churches, still oppose gay marriage and are vowing to continue their fight against it.
Thousands of Marylanders around the state want to see marriage defined and upheld between one man and one woman.
All of a sudden, it was black versus gay.
Marquise had asked, when are you and Mama getting married? And, well, we're working on it, we're working on it.
Regardless of what laws they may write, God designed the family.
We were blasphemous enough to compare the gay movement with the movement for civil rights and black folks. Is gay the new black?
I believe this election is going to be a referendum on the church.
If we don't reach out to these people, who's going to reach out to these people? Opposition.
Remember, vote for question 6.
God do not make lesbians. We're going to have the right to agree to disagree.
Yes,
okay, go ahead.
But let me finish.
You're right.
I feel like I couldn't be myself because I thought that I would shame you.
Okay, are you registered to vote?
I ain't voting on my own gay shit, though. Why?
Okay, why? What's up?
Let's be clear. This is the unfinished business of black people being free.
We are the sheep of another fold.
Our journey is not complete until our gay brothers and sisters are treated like anyone else under the law.
Our wool is black, but not our souls. Jesus will never.
I'm ready to win. I'm ready to make history.
So question 6, what was so significant about it?
Well, first off, I have to say, when I started the film, so I came up with this idea in 2008, and Maryland, at that point, we actually thought that California was going to try to put it back on the ballot in 2010, because that's how, you know, these referendum cycles go. Maryland wasn't even a blink in anybody's eye. It started in 2012, and that's the thing that's been so amazing about this film. Like, the politics have just progressed so quickly. So in 2012, the governor signed a bill in Maryland allowing for gay marriage, and the other side got enough votes, signatures, for it to become a referendum. And so the two sides were, you know, in place. And that's when I started to come in. And what was so interesting about it is that it had all the different pieces that I'd been looking at. The issue of the black vote, the black church, which is very powerful in Maryland, the Christian right and how they have inserted themselves in this fight. And of course, you know, no one really knew what was going to happen. And the question was the organizing as well going to be different this time, especially when you had a African-American population that is 30% of the electorate.
Now, a central part of this question is a whole slew of questions around the black church. How important it had been in California, how important it was in Maryland. In Maryland, describe the situation a little bit, because the church was an obvious target for the right who were looking for allies. And they've done that route many times before with great success.
Absolutely. What I found, what I discovered is that that this had been a strategy of the Christian right, at least since the 90s, of finding and working with powerful, more conservative members of the black church to propel an anti-gay political agenda. And in Maryland, which has a significant, especially Prince George's County, which is sort of the heart of the black community, very powerful black churches there. And also during shooting, a memo was discovered uncovered by the Human Rights Campaign that literally laid out a strategy from the National Organization for Marriage, saying, we're going to target black churches and seek to divide the black community on this, the black and gay community on this issue. So this was a strategy that was, you know, laid out and very clear. What was interesting is, again, because the evolution of the issue, not just in the Black community, but I would argue in this country as a whole, the optics, or maybe that's not the word, but the situation was different. So you had Black churches that, yes, were, you know, staunch anti-marriage equality churches. The opposition was led by a Black minister, as we see in the film, but you also had churches that started to come out and support LGBT equality.
Maybe you want to introduce Tone.
Tone is a gospel singer, was a gospel singer. He was at the pinnacle of the gospel community, and he made the choice to come out, and it had very tough repercussions for his career.
Here's Tone, take a look.
My father got the Billboard magazine, and I remember him opening that up. He looked at me and he said, "You did it, bub. You did it." He always used to call me bub. I just smiled because it was the first time I really felt like my dad validated me. 2 months later, he was dead. Little by little, I started feeling this thing in the back of my head, like, you know what time it is, right? I was getting tired of playing these games. I didn't tell anyone, but my music started changing a little bit. People started questioning. I came out with an EP called Rainbow. People were like, what the hell does that mean? So piece by piece, I started revealing things.
So you have individual stories like Tone's, which is so extraordinary, and he's such a great character, and you have a few of them in the film, amazing people. You also have movement stories. Talk a bit about what you've learned from all of this that's applicable, as I said at the beginning, sort of for everybody, because that's what I saw in your piece.
Yeah, what I love about making this film is that it actually became a story about activism,
yeah,
which I didn't know when I started. And I think there's so many lessons to be learned for all movements. The way that in Maryland, and you know, we saw through the young activists that are, you know, featured in the film, that they are at the forefront of talking to their own communities about this issue. That was super, super important. Caress in the film talks about it as we've gone across the country, you know, the conversations that she engaged with, and also engaged with people who weren't necessarily, you know, on her side, but that importance of conversation. The way in which, you know, the sort of knocking on the doors and the going into places. There's the scene in Baltimore where they talk to the young brothers in Baltimore. You know, normally, you know, and they had said that would be dismissed. They'd be dismissed as, oh, these people wouldn't support us. We're not going to talk to them. And as you see in the film, a different outcome happens.
That's what's up, man. It's my righteous man over here.
Okay, are you registered to vote? Okay.
How old are you?
21.
21?
All right.
You gotta get registered to vote. We gotta get you registered to vote.
I ain't voting on my gay shit, though. Why?
Okay, why? What's up?
I ain't with that. Right, y'all.
Oh, that's not cool.
What made you be gay?
All right, that's what's up. That's
Right,
what's up.
so what made you be straight? What made you be straight?
What made you be straight?
Right. That just came off of this
Same
mic.
thing.
You can't answer that question, but you got
I used to not have the same rights as you. But I know that because a black man like yourself stood up for a woman like me, I know that I got the same opportunities. So you as a black man have the opportunity to stand up for somebody else. Whether you're gay or not, these are your brothers and sisters out here, and they need you to represent.
Who is you to tell somebody who they can't have sex with, who they can't be with? They ain't got that power.
Right.
Nobody has that power to say you can't marry that young lady. Who has that power? Nobody.
But you know what? Our state has put the power in your hands, and so what we need you to do is vote for. You gonna vote for 6.
I got you.
Okay, vote
it's
for
6
6.
And all right, do y'all need community service hours? You do? All right, y'all can always volunteer with us and get community service hours. Y'all want to do that? We feed you. We bring you pizza.
So I think it's really what it is the importance of engagement and conversation and having the voices that are affected really be at the forefront.
And let's just tease that out a little bit, because a lot of people in the LGBT movement and all their strategists and advisors thought they were engaging by connecting LGBT civil rights with African American civil rights and drawing on the history of the civil rights movement in the States. That didn't work.
No.
You got to get deeper than that.
Absolutely. That's exactly it. You have to get deeper than that. You know, there are people, Sharon, for example, in the film will say that, you know, this is civil rights, and there are other black folks, black activists, LGBT activists who say this is not the same thing as civil rights. To me, that question actually doesn't really matter. The fact is that these are movements of and struggle freedom movements, and that's really what's important to focus on. And how do these movements connect? How are they different? What are the ways in which African Americans, not just African Americans, people of color, low-income people, how does marriage work for them? Why is it important for them? And then on the other side, what are the other issues that the mainstream LGBT sort of white-dominated movement need to be focused on? And where can, so it's not just transactional, but where are you really making alliances?
Well, that was what I was going to ask you. Where you see these shifts, and you saw them with the organizing strategy in Maryland, which we should say was helped by the participation of major national groups like the NAACP and others who took a historic stand and got involved in an important way. What needs to happen for example, one of those members of the Black church or one of those people that you see shift in your documentary? What do you think makes that happen when somebody thinks they have deeply held views and they move?
You know, I'm not an activist in that I've been working in this movement, but I have observed over these last few years, and obviously been very attuned to what that shift is, especially in the Black community. And I think my sort of sense of it is it really comes down to engagement, having people who are allies and LGBT folks themselves not brush off or dismiss people who disagree with them, but really actively try to engage with them. You know, I also am hopeful that films like this can help us, you know, have a conversation where the other side is not demonized. There have been a few films in the last couple of years that have, you know, sort of opened up this issue. So I'm hopeful that, you know, the media can have a role in this too.
Because the reason I asked the question is we talk on this program a lot about economic justice and economic rights. And I've commented before in commentaries about how I think we need like a coming out movement of poor people, you know, where we talk in a similar way around what people are going through on the economic front. Because some of the people in your film said, this isn't my issue. My issue is putting food on the table. Right. My priority is different. But it does seem to me there's something that could travel from one to the other.
Absolutely, and you know, ultimately I think the economics and what's happening in this country economically is really our test of, you know, how we're gonna, what our democracy is, and such challenges that are happening economically. But another place to look at is in the abortion movement, right? In the 70s, you had women coming out and saying, I've had an abortion, and, you know, coming on the cover of magazines. Then we sort of had this whole shaming in the 80s and the 90s, and now you start seeing it a little bit again. And I think you're right. I think there is this, you know, they've tried to erase poor people and just talk about the middle class. But poor people, politicians don't even talk about poor people now. So yes, I think it is that engagement. And as you know, in the LGBT movement, we have LGBT people in every facet of our community, and we have poor people in every facet of our community. You know, and I also think it's making those alliances. So, you know, there are great organizations that are trying, you know, are connecting LGBT rights and economic equality. Like, those need to be connected. Race and sexuality, those need to be connected. I think it's making those alliances as well.
One of the exciting things is you have a new generation of activists who scored a win. And there's a great line at the end of your film where Caress says, what can't I do? Yeah. You know, of course I'm in a great mood. We just did this. What can't we do? Maybe she says we. Yeah. And you think, okay, what's next for her? Yeah. Those kinds of victories can take people in exciting places.
Yeah. We have a great initiative with HBCUs, historically Black colleges, who are sending us RFPs in terms of how they would use the film to create LGBT spaces on their campuses. I read one letter from one proposal that said, you know, our college, our university has never connected these issues. This gives us a historic opportunity to do that, and I'm so excited.
Yoruba Richen, thank you so much, and congratulations on The New Black.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
you talk to people about Israel and Palestine, a lot of Jews will say they want to push us into the sea, right? It's they are one thing and we are one thing. And I'm sitting there and I'm thinking, I am not we with these soldiers. And my whole sense of we changed. And suddenly I felt like my we are people all over the world who want some kind of secular, democratic life, who are leaning towards feminism, who are leaning towards gay people in some way. And I know that that's a very narrow definition, but the thing is there are people like that everywhere. So when I get to Ramallah, I meet with a group of people, a group of queer people and straight people. Like most of the queers I'm about to meet, he doesn't like Fatah or Hamas and has his own vision for Palestine. You know, and I was like, my friends don't like the Democrats or the Republicans. Why would I not think that there's people like me everywhere? There's people who know that what's going on, there's something profoundly wrong. This is a system where there's a theory of racial supremacy, where that Jews have privileges and rights that Palestinians don't have, and that Palestinians are subjugated, and they don't have basic self-determination. There's nothing that proves that racial supremacy is justified. There's no fact in history that makes it justified.
Nobody deserves to be shot down in the street by police, you know, when they don't even have a weapon, you know? It's like, it's fighting for our right to live, fighting for our breath.
We are losing too many black brothers. I have 2 sons that I worry about every single solid day. So that's why I'm out here, because I am tired of this happening.
People are finally tired of this repeated killing of unarmed black people. I am. My brother was killed in Boston by a policeman who's still collecting his paycheck. It's just what happens in this country, you know, and it's been really devastating for my family. And just every time this comes up, it's not just my brother, it's not just Trayvon, it's not just Michael. And people act like it's a, you know, a one-off, but it's a systematic thing that happens in this country, and nobody gives a shit. No, I won't say nobody gives a shit. It's really encouraging that all these people out here are giving a shit.
New Yorkers of every age, of every race, of every religion, here today coming together to fight against something that's unjust. And that gives me hope.
It's been going on for too long, and I want to make sure that my kids, who will be children of color, are safe on the streets in the future.
Just because I'm a young black man, I shouldn't be treated no different, because the same thing that will make me bleed will make you bleed. The same thing that's going to make me cry will make you cry.
We deserve the same right to love and respect as anyone else of any other color, any other location in this world does, you know?
Shut it down! Shut it down! Shut it down! Shut it down!
I just want to see less violence going on, and everybody need to come together, you know. I like to do my part, and I hope everybody else will too.
It's a lot of pain and sadness, but also a lot of hope and excitement that everyone is coming together. People are choosing to take a stand and make a difference. They're choosing to speak up. They're choosing to have their voices heard.
We are no longer going to accept injustice in any community, but we want equality in all communities. And I really believe that that is an overarching theme here with the group of people who are gathered.
What do you want? Justice! What do we want now? What do we want? Justice!
People for years and for generations have come out here and fought. Like our ancestors have been out here and, you know, protested and held the same signs and have said the same things. We're here to tell people this is happening, not asking for it. This is a demand.
Yeah, we're here to change things. If we don't change it, nobody else is going to do it for us.
My first protest, and it's in my heart to be here and to show support. By sitting in the street and putting my hands up, to me that was a sign that my voice matters, not because I'm black, not because I'm an American, but because I'm a human being.